Imagine waking up in America and realizing that the most powerful companies in your day are not the ones with ads on your phone, not the names on billboards, and not even the brands you think you're choosing. They're the invisible systems underneath everything. The ones you never signed up for, but you still can't opt out of. The ones that decide how your paycheck arrives, how your mortgage travels from bank to bank, how your groceries move through supply chains, and even how ownership works when you buy a stock. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden companies and institutions that quietly run everyday life in the United States so smoothly, so silently, that most people don't even know they exist until something breaks. And here's the crazy part. These hidden players don't need to be famous. They don't need followers. They don't need your attention. They only need your dependence. Because once a system becomes the default rails under society, it doesn't matter whether you know the name, you're still riding it every single day. Before we go deeper, if you enjoy videos that expose the real machinery behind money, power, and everyday life, tap like and subscribe right now. It helps this channel, the Wealth Chronicles, reach more people who love the truth behind the headlines, and it tells YouTube, you want more stories like this. And trust me, stay till the end, because the final reveal connects everything in a way most people never see coming. Let's start with something that sounds boring until you realize it's basically the bloodstream of your life: how money moves. Most Americans think money moves when you swipe a card or get paid. But in the background, there are hidden highways for money, and a few gatekeepers set the rules. There's a system behind direct deposit, rent, autopay, bill pay, subscriptions, and those quiet monthly charges that hit your account without you even thinking. It's not flashy, but it's everywhere. If your paycheck shows up like clockwork, it's because these rails did their job. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Your salary, your utilities, your mortgage payment, your taxes. So much of American life depends on invisible processing systems and rulebooks that most people will never read. If you've ever had a payment delayed, reversed, or pending for no clear reason, you've brushed up against this hidden world. Now zoom out to the adult table of money movement, the transfers that aren't about coffee or groceries, but about banks and institutions moving massive amounts fast. There are networks built specifically for large value, time-critical payments, designed so that giant transactions can settle cleanly without hesitation. Most people never touch them directly, but you feel their impact in how financial institutions keep the system stable, especially when markets are stressed and timing matters. And here's a question that changes everything. If money has highways, who controls the speed limits? Who decides what final means? Who sets the rules for what counts as a valid transaction, what counts as a reversal, and what counts as a mistake? These aren't just technical details. These are invisible levers of power. If you want to follow up where I trace one paycheck, step by step, through the hidden rails from employer to your bank account, tell me by commenting the word paycheck, because I'll build that story like a movie, simple, clear, and honestly, kind of shocking. Now let's shift into a different kind of invisible power, one that doesn't move money, but decides whether you deserve it on paper. In America, your financial identity often becomes a number, a score, and that score follows you into rooms you can't even see. It influences whether you get approved, what interest rate you pay, and sometimes whether you can rent an apartment without begging someone to co-sign. Many people work hard, live responsibly, and still feel like one number is the bouncer at the door. That's not just math, that's access. And this is where the pattern starts to show. The loud part of the financial world is marketing, apps, and logos. The quiet part is the scoring, the settlement, and the rule books. That's where the real control lives. Because if you control the rules, you control the outcomes. Now let's talk about your home, the American dream, that's supposed to feel personal, emotional, and stable. But behind every mortgage is a system built for something colder: tracking, transferring, and controlling an asset that can move between institutions. A mortgage isn't just a monthly payment. In the larger machine, it's something that can be sold, serviced, bundled, and moved, sometimes multiple times, without you fully realizing what changed behind the scenes. That's why tracking and registry-style systems exist, to keep records consistent, reduce friction, and make mortgage assets easier to manage at scale. For the average homeowner, this world is invisible until something goes wrong. A paperwork issue, a servicing transfer, a confusing letter that says, "Send your next payment somewhere else." That S, when people realize the mortgage they thought was a simple agreement, is actually plugged into a wider system. Now, step out of your house and into the grocery store. You grab a product, you go to checkout. You hear the beep, simple, right? But that beep is a global language. The barcode is a passport that tells systems what the item is, who it belongs to, and how it should be tracked across warehouses, trucks, shelves, and online stores. Without shared standards, modern retail becomes chaos fast. Inventory errors multiply, online listings get messy, recalls become slower, and delivery becomes more expensive. That tiny barcode quietly holds together a huge part of the economy. If you want a full series on the invisible standards that run modern life: barcodes, payment formats, data protocols, press like if you haven't yet, because I can keep going down this rabbit hole for days. Now let's go from groceries to the grid. Electricity feels like a basic right in modern America, but keeping power reliable is a hidden universe. There are reliability standards and enforcement structures that guide how the bulk power system should be planned, operated, and protected, so the lights don't flicker every time demand spikes or a storm hits. You don't wake up thinking about grid reliability, but your entire life assumes someone is watching the system, auditing it, and forcing it to meet standards. Now take it even more everyday than electricity: water. Water coming out of your faucet feels like the simplest thing in the world. But the reality is, it's a massive industrial system from source to treatment, to storage, to distribution, run through equipment, processes, and best practice standards that help utilities and vendors align. You never see the backstage crew, but you enjoy the show every day. And when a city's water system fails, suddenly everyone understands how fragile normal really is. Stay with me, because now we're about to connect the infrastructure layer to the data layer, the part that decides what companies know about risk, pricing, and you. That's where invisible power becomes personal. Let's talk insurance, because insurance is one of the clearest examples of invisible influence. Most people assume insurance pricing is just one company's secret formula. But the insurance world depends heavily on shared standards, shared data, and shared models. There are behind-the-scenes institutions that shape how regulation, reporting, and oversight work across a state-based system. So even if you switch brands, many of the rules of the game stay the same. You're not dealing with one company. You're dealing with an ecosystem. And then there's the data engine. Insurers don't build every dataset from scratch. They rely on shared tools, industry loss data, standardized forms, and analytics that help them price risk. So when a company decides what your risk is worth, it may be using the same underlying playbook as its competitors. That's why sometimes different companies feel different, but the outcomes can look strangely similar. If you control the map of risk, you influence the whole market without being the one denying a claim. If you've ever had your insurance premium jump and thought, how did they even decide this? Share this video with one friend who complains about insurance. It'll change how they see the system. Now zoom out again. Even if your life feels local, money and institutions connect to global rails. Banks use standardized messaging networks to communicate securely for international transfers. So when you hear about sanctions, cross-border delays, or global banking disruptions, you're hearing about the pipes, not the water. Most people only notice these networks when something blocks them. Now think about employment. Your identity isn't only social, it's administrative. When you get hired, there are verification systems that compare what an employer submits with official records. These systems shape who gets access to jobs, paychecks, benefits, and stability. You don't see the gate. You only see the result: approved, delayed, or rejected. And now, something that sounds small, but quietly controls a shocking amount of business life: addresses. Think about how many institutions rely on being able to find you: banks, hospitals, credit cards, insurance, subscriptions, payroll, and government agencies. There are official change of address datasets and tools used to keep records current, reduce returned mail, and maintain accuracy. If the address layer breaks, the system starts missing you. And when the system misses you, you miss bills, replacement cards, legal notices, refunds, and opportunities. If you're still watching, type "still" here in the comments, because now we're about to hit the most mind-bending part of the entire story: ownership. When you buy a stock, most people imagine their name is written somewhere like a receipt on a master list. But modern markets run on efficiency and speed, which means everyday investors often don't show up directly the way they assume. Ownership is usually held through layers: brokerages, custodians, centralized settlement structures, so trades can happen fast at scale without paper moving around. It's a system design, but it changes what the word own feels like in practice. You often own a beneficial interest through intermediaries, not a direct line carved into stone. And here's the twist that ties everything together. All these systems, payment rails, standards, registries, scoring models, verification networks, share the same superpower. They don't need to be famous. They don't need you to like them. They only need everyone to rely on them. That's the highest form of quiet control, becoming the default infrastructure of daily life. So what do you do with this without feeling overwhelmed? You start asking better questions. Not just what brand is this, but what network is behind this. Not just who sold me this, but what system made this possible. Because the moment you see the machine, you stop thinking like a powerless passenger. You start thinking like someone who can read the map. If you want a part 2 with more hidden giants, like the private plumbing behind card networks, freight choke points, or the companies that quietly run payroll and HR, subscribe now so you don't miss it. This is exactly what we do on the Wealth Chronicles. And now, I want to hear from you. Which hidden institution surprised you the most? The payment rails, the credit score power, the barcode standards, the grid reliability layer, the mortgage tracking ecosystem, or the hidden structure of stock ownership? Drop your answer in the comments, and please share this video with someone who always says, "The system is rigged," but can't explain how. Once you see the real infrastructure, you can't unsee it, and that's where real awareness begins.